Dr. Keevil, and don't keep giving the Minnesota delegation a bigger head, please. It's tough enough to deal with these guys. Want to talk real quickly, ask real quickly about the loopholes, agencies that are not part of the requirement, standards and review, looking back. But before I do that, you know, our businesses really are concerned about the level in the implementation regulation. The OIRA, looking at 2011, you know, looked at 3,500 rules and regulations that year. About 58 of them were major rules. Only 13 underwent complete cost-benefit analysis. That seems like an awfully small amount of scrutiny and cost-benefit analysis ahead of an awful lot of regulation. I've adopted the Papa John's better pizza, better ingredients, better pizza. Better analysis means better regulation when it's done ahead of time. So I want to ask, is it the belief of the panel that we ought to close the loopholes to ensure that independent regulatory agencies also conduct that cost-benefit analysis up front? Dr. Ellig, you were at the FTC. They'd be included in there. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree that it's important to have all agencies, you know, under the same set of requirements. I think there are really two loopholes. The one loophole is independent agencies that aren't covered by the executive orders and don't have a separate legislative requirement for cost-benefit analysis don't have to do it. The other kind of loophole is under the current set of institutions, we have agencies analyzing their own regulations. We have economists in the executive branch agencies are expected to analyze basically their boss's decisions and render an impartial verdict on that. And then we have OIRA, which is inside the administration, you know, assessing what the agencies are doing. And I think we get better results with that than we would get if we didn't have those requirements and didn't have OIRA. But we still have a lot of you know, folks who are issuing regulations and essentially in charge of reviewing what they themselves are doing. So it would be nice to have, for the executive branch agencies, a more independent look at the quality of their analysis, and that's one of the things that some kind of judicial review would accomplish.
Great. To that point, standards, the transparency on those cost-benefit analysis ahead of time, where the public can comment it, you can see what ingredients go into the cake ahead of time, the analysis. Professor Dudley, you were at OIRA. I know they have best practices, best standards types approach, but statutorily, should we set up some process where there are standards where agencies can develop them publicly, you know, tailored to their regulatory challenges? They can be commented on and reviewed as part of the setting appropriate standards up front?
I do think it would be valuable to have a statutory standard that supersedes. I think a lot of the problem is, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, there are some statutes that direct agencies not to consider, or at least have been interpreted by the courts to tell agencies they can't consider things that any sensible person would want to consider in making a decision.
On the look back, it seems common sense would be to review, as a number of you have proposed, a regular process to look back and compare the actual real-life impact versus the original analysis when it is done. The general, how best do we accomplish that? Is that a statutory change that requires it to be done? Is it including a frequent judicial review as part of the process? Dr. Keevil, sort of going backward, you know, you deal with the FDA and heading this way on the panel, your views? Well, because you've seen it in your industry, obviously, with regulations, good goals, you know, shared goals, how those regulations are implemented create, as you say, huge impacts on patients, the economy, and in industries like yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've spent upwards of 2 years negotiating the latest MDUFA agreements with the FDA, and so I think there's a shared sense that if we are able to meet those goals, then that will be to the tremendous benefit of patients. Certainly within industry, we do look-backs and postmortems on our programs and our processes with great regularity. You know, one of the challenges that we have working with the agency is that sometimes the people who are present at the end of the project are not the same people that were present at the beginning of the project. So, but some better continuity of oversight of our projects would be very helpful.
Dr. Elwood, your point was, you know, standards up ahead, make sure you address the issue of agency bias, but look back gives you a chance to really look at the quality impact. Is that your position?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I agree with Dr. Greenstone that the ideal look back is done by someone other than the agency itself to give kind of an independent view.
Yeah, and Dr. Greenstone, what's the best way to create that process? Because if you do it independently, objectively, I would think it would help. This isn't a partisan issue. This is really a smarter way to hit a goal.
This is exactly an issue of how to best serve the American people. And I think it would be good to embed in the agency process, the agencies themselves, to engage and look back. But I think it's very hard for people to be completely objective. I find it hard to be objective about myself sometimes. And I think having my wife around to tell me the truth sometimes is useful, sometimes painful, but useful. And I think having an outside agency or institution, a CBO-like thing for regulation would be really quite effective and would help even improve the analyses that agencies do themselves.
My wife's looked back on me as a continual improvement process. And very timely, let me add. Senator Klobuchar, thank you all very much. Senator Klobuchar.